Natalie Freeman, welcome back to Live and Learn.
Thank you.
Back, yeah, we didn't put you off too much. You come back for another episode with us.
Absolutely.
I'm excited for this episode. This one is all about the blend between coaching and mentoring and the differences and how to make it work in your organisation. That's something you've got a lot of experience on. I'm sure there's also tips you can kind of share. Just to kind of kick us off, because probably it seems a basic question, but I think there's lots of misconceptions out there. Just the difference between coaching and mentoring, maybe to kind of kick us off.
Yeah, of course. So for me, and again, I think it's probably different for different people, depending on who you speak with and what their experiences have been. For me, coaching is very much around a real kind of defined objective, something that's possibly fairly short term or might be a stepped approach to something that's a bigger development pathway, something where you've got very, very clear objectives in terms of what you're trying to achieve that will likely result in a behavioural change as a result of the way in which you do something. Whereas that mentoring piece for me is more around finding that person that I guess shares your vision, your desired approach for something, somebody sharing their kind of experience, somebody that you look up to, somebody that you ultimately want to learn more from. And I guess I don't want to use the word idol, but that's the word that kind of springs to mind in that sense. Somebody that you really idolize and you really just aspire to be like,
and follow their path maybe in certain things, and
exactly,
especially in a work context. Or
very much so.
And what's been your experience of, do you think coaching and mentoring always gets the business buy-in it should, or do you think it's kind of viewed as a nice to have sometimes by organizations? You obviously got health and safety training, you've got different budgets for things, and that has to happen. Then you've got leadership and management programs, which is obviously different from coaching and mentoring. Do you think it's always kind of given the airtime in learning development it probably should do, given the impact it can actually have?
I think it depends on the organisation that you're in. I think some people do it incredibly well and it's just part of their culture. They live and breathe that kind of approach, that dynamic and the benefits that it can bring. I think for some organisations, like you say, where you've got set budgets and you've got other perhaps more compliance related matters that you really need to kind of focus your attention on, it makes it more difficult. And actually, I think one of the things with coaching and mentoring combined is you don't always necessarily have obvious tangible outcomes. So in terms of demonstrating that kind of basic ROI for something like that, it's a bit more difficult. You've got to really work hard to demonstrate the success of something and the value of something if you can't always put numbers to it. So I think, the best way you can possibly do that is, and this would be true of any organisation, I should think, start small. Be realistic about what you're asking people to potentially buy into, what you're potentially asking them to commit to. What does that look and feel like actually? What are the traits within the organisation? What are the values within the organisation that you're really trying to promote and kind of develop internally so that it's part of that culture as you continue to move forwards? Because if you've got great people in your organisation, you might be lucky enough to keep them for a period of time, but ultimately those people are going to grow, and that doesn't necessarily mean that they're always going to grow and stay within your organisation. So actually, how do you extract and impart everything that they can offer and all the things you love about them that helps make your culture what it is from a people perspective? How do you kind of extract that so that there's a legacy piece almost?
And helps the succession planning, isn't it? With the
very much
cycle.
So. That whole kind of grow your own talent internally piece, you really want to be tapping in to the greatness that's already there where you can do. But that being said, the other thing that I would say that perhaps people kind of fall into the trap of sometimes, particularly with mentoring, it doesn't always have to be internal, because the nice thing about mentoring is it's got to be led by the mentee. Coaching generally led by the coach, mentoring slightly different, isn't it? So it's got to be somebody that that mentee really associates with. And I think it's not being afraid to shift the boundaries if that's what needs to happen in order to find that perfect match. You might have a starting point, you might have a pairing that you think is right for whatever reason, but actually if that's not quite the case, once that relationship is up and running, it's got to be beneficial to both parties in that sense. So you might have to think a little bit bigger, you might have to think externally in that sense. particularly for us in our sector in housing, we're really, really fortunate that it's a very supportive sector. It's not like kind of a sales environment where you have competitors, that type of thing. You know, everyone is very supportive of one another. So actually, the next time we're looking to match somebody up with a mentor, that might not be from within our own organisation.
And it's a really good point, because I mean, I've been fortunate to have some really good mentors, and a lot of them aren't even in the same sector or even the same job at all. And I think when I first was younger, I kind of thought, oh, you're looking for the more senior version of yourself, and that's what you need. But actually having someone who can not actually have the experience and then even ask you questions about why you feel stressed about something can actually really help, can't it? It doesn't have to be a mini me sometimes.
Exactly that. Exactly that. And I think somebody, in terms of making it a success, like I say, it's got to be somebody that shares similar thoughts, values, all of that kind of stuff, but also somebody that's going to ask you and challenge you in terms of really great questioning. You know, how are they going to help draw out the best from you? And that's where there's the art of getting the balance right between the coaching aspect and the mentoring aspect. Because for me, there's a lot of value in terms of the specifics that the coaching piece brings to the table. There's a lot to be said for somebody kind of coaching you through a process, through a scenario, and you drawing the conclusions for yourself, you getting yourself to the point where actually that kind of sense of achievement, that sense of pride, that sense of growth, that sense of being able to see what can come next as a result of your actions, and that shift in that behavioural change that I mentioned. There's something really empowering and quite rewarding about that. The mentoring piece is less formal. You're not going to have those day-to-day objectives in the same way. You're not going to necessarily sit down and write a clear list in terms of what your outcomes might be. That guidance evolves much more organically. It's something that's just going to happen over a period of time, and it's something that hopefully will have longevity as well. So, you know, you're really looking for that much longer term investment in order to make it a success.
And what would be your kind of 2 or 3 top tips if you someone's been asked to be a mentor for the first time? Maybe they've done some coaching before but not mentoring. What would your advice be to a mentor?
To be open to the art of possibility, because I think there's, like we said, there's that real kind of difference in terms of the expectation of the two roles, and actually a great coach doesn't always make for a great mentor, and vice versa. So be open to what the process might bring to you as a result. Be open and honest in terms of a pairing or a match that you might be a part of. Be realistic in terms of whether or not that's the best fit for you. And actually the only way you're going to know that is by trying. And so I think just being brave enough to be able to say, actually, this doesn't quite feel like the right fit for me, or is there something else that I can do in terms of offering up an opportunity? But I would also say just be brave and go for it, because actually the number of people that probably sit on the fence and think, I could do that, or maybe I've got something to offer, or initiate the conversation. You know, come forward, have those conversations, think about how you might be able to help somebody, think about what it is, you know, what great experiences have you had, either in the work environment or in life, depending in terms of what it might be. But, you know, really kind of reflect on what that might look and feel like, and why you think somebody else might benefit from hearing about some of that and perhaps seeing some of that firsthand.
And flipping that, what would your advice be to a first-time coach? Or I guess what's more common is it's an old L&D concept, but there's more and more of it, I think, as people have got less time. Manager as a coach.
Yeah.
What's the relationship between a manager and a coach? Is a manager always sometimes the best person to coach? But often they're put in those coaching positions because they need someone to do some work for them. Maybe just what's your experience of that kind of relationship, and what makes a good coach, and the complexity of when that can be a manager or sometimes isn't?
Yeah, and I think you can be both, would be my view. You might not be both, though. And again, it's about being realistic in that sense. And I think you're probably right in terms of the expectation of some organisations is that you will fulfil both roles.
And the manager's got all the answers and they can coach everyone everything. And that's
exactly
not necessarily the best thing to do.
And, you know, that would make me question, well, how many organisations really invest in their managers to that extent? Because, you know, we talk about leadership and management training. How often do we talk about training people in order to be an effective coach? Probably less than half.
A fraction of the management training, I'd probably suggest,
Absolutely. So I think, you know, there's very much an art in terms of what makes an effective coach. And I think this is where perhaps, in terms of the crossover between manager and coach, but the bit for the coach that really stands out for me is that ability to ask great questions at the right time, and better yet, listen to the responses. Because I think it's all too easy sometimes to kind of sit there and guide somebody, but then almost inflict your own view and almost get to the next point on their behalf.
Yes.
That art in being able to just stay that one step removed and empower them to be able to get them there for themselves. And actually, if they can't, that's okay. It's just going to take a little bit longer to do that. You're going to think about the next question. You're going to think about how you frame that slightly differently to help them get to where you think they might need to be, or indeed where they might think they need to be. But yeah, very much the art of listening. And I think that's something that's very underrated these days.
Or avoid something I've always heard is, it's quicker if I do it myself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, not a fan of that.
That's not a healthy place to be. That's short-termism, isn't it? In the
it
extreme.
really is. And I think, like we were saying in terms of people potentially moving on, you risk losing so much.
Risking their development and them feeling empowered in their job. And yeah, there's lots of things to that.
Very much so.
And Natalie, we always wrap up with our live and learn. What would be your top tip on coaching and mentoring? Maybe where you've seen it done really well, or you've got a funny story on it, or one thing you wish you knew years ago when you first got into L&D.
I think just being open to the possibility in terms of what might be a good fit and what might not be quite such a good fit, and feeling empowered to be able to say, maybe this one's not quite right, or maybe I'd be a better fit for somebody else perhaps. I think, sometimes you run the risk of thinking you've committed, whether you're a mentee, whether you're a mentor, and it's almost that I have to make this work feeling.
And you're stuck with it, or
somebody's investing in me, so it's the right thing for me to do to see this through, kind of thing. Well, actually, my advice would be, don't force that relationship. Keep it very, very natural, very organic. Remember why you're both there as part of that process. If you're the mentor, your mentee is considering you somebody that they are looking up to, somebody that they want to share in your experiences, hear all of that firsthand. If you're the mentor, you want to be confident that you're giving the best possible shared experiences with that individual. If they don't appear to be as motivated as you might have expected them to be, or as engaged as you might have liked them to be, there's nothing wrong with saying it's not quite right. And I think that that's something that actually, it's brave to be able to step back and say that. And I think it's something that is going to make it a more valuable experience for both of you, because actually there will be a great fit for you in another partnership. It just might be that this isn't quite the right one.
I think that's a wrap. Really appreciate all of your guidance as always, and joining us again on the podcast. And there's loads of things I'll be taking away from it. So thank you very much for your time.
Brilliant. Thank you for having me.